Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is your boy Fitzmonk TV here, AKG Lauren 33. I am back here today with a bonus episode of the Legit Shoot podcast. I hope you guys are doing well, staying healthy, and are enjoying the last couple days of 2021. Thank you guys as always for joining me here on the channel and on the podcast. You know, before we get into anything and everything today, just want to let you guys know, for those of you guys who missed out on the Monday Night Raw review, that is live on the channel as we speak. We went over everything that happened on the last episode of Monday Night Raw, and basically the statement I would give to you guys to wrap up last night's Monday Night Raw, depending on when you guys are seeing this. An awful episode to end an awful 2021. Right, I could just tell you guys that right away, and then you guys wouldn't even have to go check out the review. But the review is live on the channel. We talk about everything, especially the Miz and Maurice renewing their vows in the main event segment as we get ready for WWE Day 1. So go check that out if you guys haven't. It is live on the channel. But getting into this episode, right? You guys see the title. We're gonna focus on basically one main thing, and we do this almost every single year. Heading into day one, right? January 1st, 2022, where we have a pay-per-view on Saturday, right? Starting off the new year, I always like to look back. I always like to look back at the good, the bad, and the ugly for WWE every single year. And of course, since this is a pro Sasha Banks channel, you guys know I'm a huge Sasha Banks fan. She's my favorite wrestler. I like to look back at what she does every single year. Just something to have fun with. And you guys love this, when I do this video every single year. So let's keep the tradition going. All right. And I just want to let you guys know, I am planning later on in the week, depending on when you guys are watching this, of course, we're going to have a stream where we talk about everything WWE did this year alone. Everything they did, not from Sasha to Edge to Seth Rollins, everybody. We call it our end of the year wrap up stream. So watch out for that. I'm thinking either Thursday or Friday, because I might push it to Friday, because I know that I don't think there's gonna be an episode of SmackDown on Friday. Which is rare, but I believe instead of doing SmackDown, they're just doing they're doing like a WWE top 10. WWE's doing their own show, looking back at the top moments of this year. So they're giving their superstars a break, especially when they have a pay-per-view the next day, on the first day of the new year. So I can understand why WWE is doing that. So I'm thinking about either Thursday or Friday, depending on where the rest of the week goes. We will do our little WWE wrap up stream, where I'll let you guys in the comment section, in the chat, let me know what you guys thought were the best moments of the year from WWE wise, and we'll talk about all the good stuff, all of the bad stuff, and especially all of the ugly stuff from WWE. But we're gonna focus on Sasha here, and I know you guys see the title, right? I think I had the same title when I did this video last year. And the question was Sasha Banks the MVP of WWE this year, right? And, you guys have heard me say this on many different reviews, right? Especially when it comes to WWE this year. This may have been WWE's worst year creative ever. And it seems like every single year we're repeating ourselves, but WWE continues to outdo themselves every single year. Every single year, from a creative standpoint, they get worse and worse and worse. So much to the point you can apply it to me in this channel, right? Like, I didn't even do as many podcasts as I usually do this year, just because I just didn't feel like sitting here and talking about WWE, because I was just like, I just didn't want to talk about it. In years past, I would do a review regardless of how good or bad the show was, but this year, especially with everything that's happening in my life, it's been a crazy year. So many highs, so many, some lows. I'm so blessed to be here. I just felt there was just so many points where I just felt like I just don't want to do a review. And especially I know my fans and you guys who support the podcast and the channel, you guys always want that content and you guys watch regardless. But still, I just mentally, I just didn't want to do a review. I just couldn't sit there and do the reviews. And, You just look at WWE's creative, like from so many different standpoints. They're just so poor, and I don't have to go through them. We'll talk about a lot more of those in depth when we talk about the best and the worst from WWE later this week. But you just look at really the top of the company, right? Okay, and you look at the MVPs. Sasha's up there. I remember sitting here just a year ago in 2020, right? Remember, we've been in this pandemic now for nearly 2 years, right? Early, around February 2022, God willing, if we get there. That will mark officially 2 years that we've been in this pandemic, right? Where COVID has taken over our lives and the way we live, right? You look, and just last year, we talked at length, and it was pretty anonymous about over everyone. Everyone thought that Sasha and Bailey were the MVPs of WWE that year, right? How they carried WWE throughout the early months of the pandemic, back when they were at the Performance Center with no crowd. Then they had a little bit of a crowd with the NXT wrestlers. Then they slowly expanded to the Thunderdome. And the Thunderdome, I know the Thunderdome was only, remember, they were back in the Thunderdome, what was it, back in June? That was the last show they had. That was only about 6 months ago. It already feels like that was eons ago, really. But, yeah, remember, they were just in the Thunderdome 6 months ago in June, right before they went back to live crowds. Right before Money in the Bank. And, back in 2020, when they were in those stages of the Thunderdome and all that, right, with having no crowds, the fact that Sasha and Bailey were still able to tell such great storytelling with their feuds and their stories and everything that they did, they really carried WWE on their back, literally. From the tag titles going to all three brands, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, when it still was NXT. When it was still Triple H's NXT, not the NXT we're seeing nowadays. But they were doing everything. And then eventually when Bailey turned on Sasha, and then they had a really good feud, even though they had no crowd. We finally got the Bailey and Sasha main roster feud we had been waiting years for, right? And then Sasha becoming SmackDown Women's Champion and being the face of SmackDown alongside Roman Reigns when Roman was still early in his reign. Everything they did during that year in the early stages of the pandemic was gold. And it was pretty obvious. When you looked at the MVPs for WWE that year, it was Sasha, Bailey, right? And you could put Drew McIntyre on there. You could put Randy Orton and Bobby Lashley on there, right? And then you could put Roman Reigns, even though Roman was out for a good amount of the first part of the pandemic. Remember, Roman didn't come back till early fall. Because Roman this was at home during the early stages of the pandemic to protect himself. So, those were the big names where you thought of the MVPs. I guess you can kind of put Asuka on there, even though her booking was a little shady. But, those 5-6 names, those were the big MVPs of WWE during 2020. And I think everyone agreed that Sasha and Bailey were 1 and 2. They're at the top of that list, and it was pretty non-debatable. Now, when you look at this year, right, Bailey and Sasha, they both, dealt with injuries here and there. Right? Bailey went out with a major knee injury, around June, July-ish, and we know she won't be back till early 2022, around WrestleMania time. And we know that Sasha did a lot, early and in the fall. Most of Sasha's work was through the first 4 months of the year, and then she was off for the spring and summer, came back, and then, she's been back since August on, really. But during those 8 months of work, really, Sasha's been doing A+ work. And you look at a year where WWE's creative has been piss poor. You look like, who's your options for MVPs? Of course, Roman would be there. Roman has reigned, no pun intended. Roman's been your Universal Champion all year long, and he's had his classics with, the triple threat at WrestleMania with Edge and Daniel Bryan, great matches with Daniel Bryan, Cesaro, John Cena at SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar, right? Reigns, Finn Balor, the list goes on and on. So Roman might be the obvious choice when you look at the MVP for WWE a year, and I know they didn't do a Superstar of the Year award. They didn't do the Slammy awards this year, but still, when you look at it, I would put Roman on that list. I would probably put Seth Rollins on that list, right? For especially with the work he did as a heel. Plus, he had fantastic matches with Cesaro, right? His feud with Edge. I think a lot of people will agree that's probably the feud of the year, WWE wise. Seth Rollins is redefining himself as a heel. Big E stepping to the spotlight as one of the biggest stars of WWE, winning Money in the Bank, becoming WWE champion. I would put Big E on that list. I would put Bobby Lashley on that list again because Bobby Lashley, before Big E became WWE champion, Bobby Lashley, helped carry Raw. He was a great WWE champion in my opinion. Along with having MVP on his side. Lashley wasn't, the greatest, but he did a solid job as WWE champion in my book. And you look, he had some pretty damn good matches this year too. So I would put Bobby Lashley on that list for discussion. I would put RK Bro on that discussion as well. They were arguably WWE's best tag team this year. Especially when Raw has been garbage for the most part. Whenever you saw Matt Riddle and Randy Orton on screen, remember their relationship started in the Thunderdome and carried on to them forming an actual really good story of them becoming a team and now becoming Raw Tag Team Champions. And they've been the Raw Tag Team Champions now for what? Last 4 or 5 months now. And they've been pretty damn good. One of the only bright spots of Monday Night Raw. So I would put RK Bro on that list as well, right? So what we have? We have Roman, we have Bobby Lashley, we have RK Bro, which they count as one. I'd put the Usos on there as well, just as consideration. I'd put the Usos on there. So that's like about 4 names. I know there was somebody else. Edge. I'll definitely put Edge on there, and Seth Rollins. I already put Seth on there. So that's about 5, 6 names. If I'm thinking Roman, Bobby Lashley, Seth, RK Bro, the Usos, I would put Edge as number 6, right? Because Edge, all year Edge, from winning the Royal Rumble to his match with Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania, which is arguably match of the year. You could put, his feud with Seth Rollins, which I already talked about, and all the great matches they had. Edge should be on that list as well. So that's about 6 people I would put in the conversation. And then on the women's side, the only 2 names I could probably give you is, Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. Really. And, Bianca with the great match she had with Sasha, even though the feud was not booked the way it was, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, But Bianca, she's done some great things this year. There's been, times where Bianca hasn't been as great as we expected her to be, and that's on WWE, but I got to put Bianca in the conversation because, she was one of the only bright spots for the women's division. When you look at the women's division as a whole, in 2021 for WWE, this was one of the worst years for WWE's women's division. They really took a step back. All that talk about the evolution, right? All that talk about them, putting care into their women's division, all that, right? Everything that Sasha and Bayley and Becky and Charlotte fought for when they first came to the main roster in 2015, they just took a step back this year, really. Especially, it felt so reminiscent of WrestleMania just a couple years ago, WrestleMania 35, right? After Becky, Ronda, and Charlotte main evented WrestleMania 35, WWE took steps back. Remember, Sasha was gone for 4 months, and we didn't know if she was going to come back. Ronda was gone, right? And the women's division was just awful, for the better part of that year. Remember, Bayley was still a babyface and she was doing nothing with the SmackDown Women's Championship. And then eventually, it wasn't until Sasha came back later on in the fall after SummerSlam and she turned heel and came back with the blue hair. That was when the women's division picked up steam again and finished off the year pretty strong. Because then you had Sasha and Bayley become a heel alliance, right? Bayley finally turned heel, and that's when the women's division picked up. Kind of similar this year. After WrestleMania this year, the women's division fell apart. It's like they did a poor job of booking Bianca's reign outside of the match with Bayley, right? And then the Raw Women's Championship scene was awful. You know, you kept flip flopping the titles. You gave the title to Rhea Ripley 2 weeks after she had debuted on the main roster. Right? There was no care, no story there. Then you had the robot Charlotte come back. And then you kept flip flopping the titles. Remember, you had Nikki ASH win the Money in the Bank briefcase, and then you had just for Nikki to hold the title, right? She cashed in on Charlotte just for 3 weeks later at SummerSlam, just to give the title back to Nikki ASH. It's a bunch of garbage. I mean, not the back to Nikki ASH, to give the title back to Charlotte. It was garbage, pure garbage. And like the women's division during the summer months was so reminiscent of 2019. It was so unwatchable, so much garbage. On one champion, you don't know how to book them correctly, and on the other hand, you have the other championship which being wrestled around, thrown around like Play-Doh, hot potato, all that. There's a bunch of bull crap, right? Nothing for us to care about. So you look at what Sasha did this year. The only time that the women's division was really watchable was when Sasha was on television. Because at least when she was on television, it made sense for the most part. Right? It made sense for the most part. And, we're going to go through what Sasha did this year. Right? And when I look at the people that should be considered for WWE's MVP, I would say probably Roman's the favorite. Right? And you can make a big case, for Edge and then for Seth. Right? But I'll put Sasha right up there. She might not be the obvious choice like she was last year with Bayley. But when we're talking about the MVPs of WWE this year, I think Sasha is on the list. Right? She deserves to be on the list. So MVPs, right? Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Edge, RK Bro, Usos, Bobby Lashley, and Bianca Belair, and Sasha Banks. I would put those eight individuals as the ones who stood out on the main roster this year and you can make arguments for. Some, of course, have way larger arguments than others, but I would put those as the ones that I would consider for MVPs this year from WWE standpoint. But we're going to focus on Sasha and what she did this year. Right. Usually, WWE always posts a poster of what their superstars did in pay-per-views this year. Right. So it makes it a little bit easier because, like I said, a lot happens. A lot happens with WWE. And good, bad, and good, bad, ugly doesn't matter. At least it makes it a little bit easier to digest everything that we seen from WWE this year. And also, it can be hard to remember, especially with how much WWE content and how much, not even WWE, how much wrestling content we get these days, right? From WWE to AEW and everything else. It's easy to forget, like everything that's happened. So we go back to the start of the year with Sasha. She had the Royal Rumble match. Remember, this was her second match in her feud with Carmella, right? And this was a follow-up to the really good, I would say one of Sasha's most underrated matches ever, and easily Carmella's best match ever, TLC 2020. Sasha and Carmella had a show stealer of a match, right? You knew it was going to be good because Sasha's the best female wrestler in the world, but no one expected it to be that good. And then they decided to do Sasha and Carmella again for the Royal Rumble, just to give Sasha another title defense. And Sasha and Carmella had another good match. It wasn't as good as the match they had at TLC, of course, but it was still a decent match, in my opinion. And it was a solid way to start off the year for Sasha Banks with her defending and retaining her SmackDown Women's Championship, right? And then, of course, we know Bianca Belair. She won the Women's Royal Rumble along with Edge winning the Men's Royal Rumble, right? And this is where things get a little bit wonky, of course, with everything that happened here. Sasha and Bianca, even though it was obvious that was going to be who Bianca chose, right? We all knew Bianca was going to choose Sasha for her opponent at WrestleMania. They just dragged it out. They made us wait about a month for Bianca to officially name Bianca as her challenger. All right, they waited a month for Bianca to name Sasha as her challenger. And they had Bianca going to NXT and Raw, teasing that she might face, I believe Kairi Sane was still the NXT Women's Champion. Not Kairi Sane. Io Shirai, I believe Io was still the NXT Women's Champion at the time. And Asuka was the Raw Women's Champion. But we all knew it was going to be Bianca and Sasha, right? It was just, we all knew that was going to be match. And the history, think about the history here. Between having two African American women in this huge women's championship match, right? It was huge. It was history, right? And everyone was talking then and there. Would it main event WrestleMania with it being a 2-night thing? And the big problem became, the booking of this feud, and they teased. Sasha and Bianca becoming women's tag team champions, pulling a John Cena and Shawn Michaels from 2007, right back around WrestleMania 23. They teased that, but they never gave Sasha and Bianca the tag titles. And you guys remember, I kept bitching and moaning, if you're not going to have Sasha and Bianca win the tag titles, there is no point in doing the match. No point. They wasted two straight pay-per-views of Sasha and Bianca challenging then champions Nia and Shayna Baszler at Elimination Chamber and Fastlane, and they didn't do it. It was a waste of time, and it really did hurt the build for this match. We all knew, regardless of what happened, Sasha and Bianca was going to be a classic at WrestleMania, but it was just so piss poor the build. They could have spent so much more time telling a cool story with Sasha and Bianca. At first, I was on board because I was like, "Oh, you're going the John Cena and Shawn Michaels route, right?" I was a little kid when John Cena and Shawn Michaels faced, but looking back, it was a great story that they told. Right, two baby faces, but they both want to beat the crap out of one another, but also being tag champions and all that. Right, I was like, okay, you can tell a great story here with Sasha and Bianca if you want to go down that route. But the fact that they never did, the fact that they never had them win the tag titles, it was such a waste of time. It was a waste of time. You could have told this super interesting story with Sasha and Bianca, but instead you wasted 2 months of their build just with them going after the tag titles for them not to win it. It was really just, what the hell are we doing here? And I hated it. If they had won the tag titles, that's one thing. But if you never had plans to have them enter WrestleMania as tag champions before their WrestleMania match, why did you waste our time on it? The only good thing I think I remember from this point in time was, one, Sasha's great ring attires, of course. When Sasha had like the Spider-Man attire from Fastlane, that probably was Sasha's best attire all year, if I'm being honest with you guys, outside of her WrestleMania attire. Sasha, what was I saying? Yeah, Sasha, Sasha's Spider-Man attire. And I remember Sasha having a really good match with Nia Jax on SmackDown. Sasha was supposed to defend against Nia Jax on SmackDown, and they actually had a decent match because Sasha Banks was like the only person that could get a decent match out of Nia Jax. And Nia's gone now. Good luck to all your future endeavors. I'm just glad we don't have to deal with her anymore and her injuring people in WWE. But yeah, you look at it, Sasha and Nia had a really good title defense, and that was the only two things I could remember that were positive. One of Sasha's ring attires and a good match that she had with Nia Jax. And, WWE could have told a super interesting story because everyone was so invested into it, but they just did a piss poor job of, building up Sasha and Nia. Sasha and Bianca. After Fastlane, after their second failed attempt at getting the women's tag titles, with I think there was only about 3 weeks left until WrestleMania, right? And that was when WWE finally trying to tell a little bit of a story here. Sasha kept teasing turning heel, but she never fully did. She got a little more cockier, of course, and a little more arrogant, which goes along with her character, but she never fully turned heel, you know? Yeah, there was some really cool moments. Sasha just bitch slapping the hell out of Bianca Belair, But for the most part, the build for their match going to WrestleMania was disappointing. And then I remember, the night before WrestleMania, Sasha versus Bianca was announced to be the main event of night one. And everyone was going crazy because there was a big conversation with Sasha and Bianca main event night one, right? And make history, being only the second women's match, the main event of WrestleMania, or would they go with Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship? They made the right call. They had McIntyre and Bobby Lashley. Oh, excuse me, I'm itching. They had McIntyre and Bobby Lashley open the show, and then they had Sasha and Bianca close the show, right? And even though the build was piss poor, Sasha and Bianca killed it at WrestleMania. They absolutely killed it. Even though it was a stressful time for me because I kept arguing with everybody on social media and on here about how Sasha should have won, right? And how Sasha, deserved to win that match and why it would have been better for Bianca in the long run. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys. To this day, even though it's in the past, that was 8 months ago, it's whatever. We can't go back and change the past. There's still a large part of me that, to this day believes Sasha should have won. Especially with what would happen to Bianca later on at SummerSlam, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. But whatever happened. Bianca won the match. We all remember, Bianca absolutely spanking Sasha with her hair whip that left Sasha with a mark, but it was a fantastic match. And in my opinion, it should be up there when you talk about the best matches of the year in all of wrestling. I'm talking AEW included in that. In my opinion, it was the best women's match of the year, in either company, right? I know some people are going to say Britt Baker, some of her Dynamite, or some of her AEW matches, but in my opinion, no, there's nothing that comes close. Sasha and Bianca was the best women's match of the year, and it should be in the conversation for best wrestling match, period, of the year. I know a lot of people are probably going to look at Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan, and Edge from night 2 of WrestleMania. Some people are going to take Edge and Seth Rollins from SummerSlam, or their Hell in a Cell match. And, that's fair. I'm not going to say those aren't great matches, But I think Sasha and Bianca is up there. It's definitely, in my opinion, top 3, no debate. No debate, Sasha Bianca was top 3 best wrestling match of the year. Some people will have it at number 1. Some people have it at number 2. Some people have it at number 3. But I think there's no debate that it was one of the 3 best wrestling matches we saw all year in the sport of pro wrestling, right? And they made history. The only bad thing that came out of it was, of course, Sasha's WrestleMania streak gets extended. She still, has not won a WrestleMania match. And I think, it's up to... time goes by so fast now. What is it? 0-6 now? And I hate that because that's really the only thing people can hold against Sasha and her greatness. But, it is what it is. Hopefully, finally, that things will change this year for WrestleMania in Dallas. But, we'll deal with that when we get there. But Sasha and Bianca absolutely killed it at WrestleMania and deserved to be in the conversation of best wrestling match of the year, and was probably one of WWE's best moments altogether. Definitely when you talk about the best moments of WWE as a whole, Sasha Bianca should probably be there in the top 5. Just as a moment, not even as a match, just as a moment in time, Sasha and Bianca should be up there when we talk about the best moments for WWE as a whole. And then, like I said it earlier in the video, this is when, after, WrestleMania, WWE's women's division took a dive, right? And the big thing here is Sasha got a little bit of a break. And, I would say this is a well deserved break. It was a little bit different from 2019 because you guys remember in 2019 when Sasha left after WrestleMania for 4 months, we didn't know if she was coming back. And we all know the story of how mentally drained she was and all those other things and how, she was actually considering leaving WWE. But she came back, and I think that was the right move on her regard. But this time, she was just taking a break just because she had been working straight through, even during the Thunderdome, carrying WWE. She had been working with no breaks for the last year and a half, all that from like 2019 all the way through 2021. So she took some time off, well deserved. And we all knew that whenever she came back, that was when the rematch with Bianca would take place. And then they set the stage for that, about a month before SummerSlam. Sasha had one of the best returns of the year. It wasn't the best return of the year. I think that has to go to John Cena and Money in the Bank. That gave me goosebumps. If you guys remember, that was an epic moment seeing Cena finally come back after nearly 2 years. Not 2 years, like a year and a half. That was an epic moment. I think easily John Cena should get a moment or a return of the year. Some people would give it to Brock Lesnar, and there's some other, Becky Lynch at SummerSlam, of course. But I think easily the return of the year should go to John Cena at Money in the Bank. But Sasha had a pretty damn special return in her own right. And this is when SmackDown was probably at its best, on the road to SummerSlam, us having a build for John Cena and Roman Reigns and Sasha Bianca, my two favorite superstars. It was actually pretty damn enjoyable to watch SmackDown for that month, right, as they were building towards SummerSlam. Sasha came back. She came back as a babyface, and then in that same night, she turned heel on Bianca Belair. We all remember her putting Bianca in the bank statement and is telling her, I got you an ESPY. I got you a match of the year. I got you everything. Everything. And then that's setting the stage for their rematch. And then things fell off course. About a week before SummerSlam, we were all hyped for the match. A lot of us thought, and I still believe that if the rematch had taken place, Sasha probably would have got her revenge and probably would have beat Bianca at SummerSlam. I don't know if the match would have been as good as a WrestleMania match, of course, but knowing how great Sasha Banks is in the ring, I think, she probably would, probably would have done everything in her power to make that match even better than their WrestleMania match. But we know that a week before SummerSlam, Sasha, we believe what's believed is she got COVID. We know that WWE is very, very quiet, about reviewing when their superstars has COVID, and I don't really understand why they are so silent about it, because you look at other sports organizations, right? The second, somebody from a major sports team, no matter if it's the NBA or the NFL or the NHL or whatever, the second one of them has COVID, we find out about it, right away, right away. But for some reason, WWE is very, very quiet when it comes to reviewing who has COVID and who doesn't, right? So then what happened is, about a week before SummerSlam, we heard that Sasha was taken off the road, and, her match, and this is WWE's fault because they still kept promoting the match, even though they knew that Sasha was not going to be there. It actually led to one of my best videos of the year when I went on an epic rant about, Bianca and Becky and Sasha and everything that happened at SummerSlam, because it was just such it was one of WWE's biggest creative blunders of the year. It may have been their worst creative blunder of the year, really, when you look back at it. Everything, the whole way they handled the Sasha situation. Like I said, if they knew that Sasha was not going to be able to compete at SummerSlam, they should have stopped promoting the match. What's stupid is they kept promoting the match. WWE didn't say anything. Nothing. They just had no comment that whole week. There was about an 8-day period between when Sasha was taken off the road and SummerSlam. They kept promoting the match. So they made everybody believe that the match was still on. It wasn't until hours, really, before SummerSlam that people finally started finding out that, oh, Sasha's not in the building and the match is not going to take place, right? And even still, up to the match taking place, they still promoted it. They had a video package and everything put out, still make you believe, oh, maybe the match is happening. And it wasn't until Bianca came out, that's when you knew the match isn't happening, because there would be no reason to have Bianca, the champion, come out first if the match wasn't taking place, right? And then we all remember when they announced that Sasha was not going to be able to compete. I was pissed out of my mind, you know. And then we had Becky Lynch return. And at the time, of course, we all knew that if there was one, you know, or not going to, you know, Becky's not better than Sasha. You guys know this. But we all knew that if we're looking for somebody from a superstar perspective, somebody that, you know, that is on a similar level as Sasha Banks from a superstar's perspective inside the company, Becky Lynch was that person. We knew that Becky had been out for basically the last year and a half because she had, you know, gotten pregnant and had just had her daughter. So Becky Lynch came back to replace Sasha at SummerSlam. And even though I had no problem with Becky being the replacement, you guys all know, if you guys have watched any video on that on this channel, I have a problem with how WWE, you know, booked Becky and Bianca. Becky buried Bianca in, what was it, 16 seconds, I believe? 8 seconds, I don't remember. But we all know Becky hit Bianca with the Beck Exploder, and then 1, 2, 3 won the SmackDown Women's Championship. And we all know how bad this was. You know, you guys all remember my rant about Bianca being buried. And still, in my opinion, Bianca hasn't fully recovered. Bianca, she's done a decent job of still making herself a star in that women's division. But still, to this day, Bianca, in my opinion, has not fully recovered from that burial at SummerSlam. That was a horrific moment. Everything from, you know, WWE continuing to market Sasha for SummerSlam, knowing that she wasn't going to be there. Everything to Sasha, to Becky's return and having Becky beat Bianca, what was it, 8 seconds, 16 seconds, whatever it was, you know, and then WWE claiming that this was to elevate Bianca in the end, right? Look at where we are now, 4 months later. This is part of the reason why I still believe Sasha should have won at WrestleMania. And of course, we didn't know how the year was going to transpire from that point on. Of course, we didn't know that. But now that we've seen everything that transpired, if you could have gone back and you knew everything WWE had planned, would you have still had Bianca beat Sasha at WrestleMania? I don't think so. I think a lot of you guys are smarter than that, you know? So, they had Bianca lose to Becky, you know, and it was awful, terrible, right? And to this day, I still think it was a bad decision. Look at Becky claimed that she was going to elevate Bianca, and she never did. She never did. She didn't even elevate herself. All she did was be selfish and is now reigning on top of the women's division again. Same two individuals, burying everybody and doing nothing to elevate anybody but anyone but themselves. You guys know, of course, I'm talking about Becky and Charlotte. Right, so we go back into SmackDown before the draft, of course, right? We don't know really what's going to happen with the draft, but still Sasha then came back again, right? And, you know, most of us believe that she had COVID. You know, we may never get fully an answer to what happened. You know, even Sasha never has revealed to us what happened. And we know, of course, Sasha is a very private person, so she may never give us the true answer of, you know, what happened. But anyway, we come back and then we get Sasha and Becky and Bianca announced for Crown Jewel, right? I want you guys to remember, Sasha only competed on 7 pay-per-views this year, you know? 7 pay-per-views she only competed on 6 pay-per-views, but she appeared on 7 because remember she returned at Extreme Rules, right, to attack Bianca and Becky, which was actually a really cool moment. But they announced Sasha, Becky, and Bianca for Crown Jewel, and we don't know what's gonna happen because we have no idea what the draft happening, you know. And Bianca, Sasha, and Becky gave us an epic triple threat at Crown Jewel. All three of them worked their asses off. Especially, since it's Crown Jewel, it's Saudi Arabia, those shows may not get as much notice, because it's an international show, even though still, from a WWE creative standpoint, it's very big because, titles are on the line and they treat it like it's an actual pay-per-view here in the States. It was a good show, in my opinion, and it was a great triple threat. One of the pauses I will give WWE this year is they had a lot of great triple threat matches. There was a lot of them from TV to pay-per-view, right? Daniel Bryan versus Edge versus Roman Reigns, probably the best one of them all. You had Sasha, Becky, and Bianca. Charlotte, Nikki ASH, and Rhea Ripley had a pretty good one at SummerSlam, even though I don't care for it because you guys don't know I don't care about Charlotte at all. Charlotte, Rhea Ripley, and Asuka had a really good triple threat at one of the pay-per-views. Braun Strowman, when he was still signed, Braun Strowman, Drew McIntyre, and Bobby Lashley, I believe that was WrestleMania Backlash. They had a really good triple threat match. And it was just a theme all year. Just WWE, for one thing they did right, they did a lot of great triple threat matches. A lot of really well done triple threat matches. I will give them credit where credit is due. I'll shit on them all the time for all the bad, mistakes they make. But when they do something right, you guys know I will give them their props. And they did a really, really good job with their triple threat matches this year. Sasha, Becky, and Bianca, I think they probably had the second best triple threat match of the year, right behind Roman, Daniel Bryan, and Edge. So when we're talking about the best matches of the year, we already have Sasha and Bianca from WrestleMania already in the top three. In my opinion, it's top two. And then you got to put Sasha, Becky, and Bianca on there as well. Definitely, WWE did have some great matches this year. I don't know if it's in the top five. I would have to make a list. It would probably be pretty close. But still, another great match to add to Sasha's Classic, right? And it also meant a lot to those three women because they went on social media and they talked about how big it was to compete down there in Saudi Arabia. And they had the crowd in the palm of their hands. The crowd was fully into it, And it was a really great match. They went at it for over 20-something minutes, and you didn't know who was going to win. I did hate the finish, of course, right? Which has become a common theme with all of Becky's title matches these days. Becky cheated by rolling Sasha up and having her foot on the rope. But it was still a great match. It was fantastic, and it was another one of Sasha's A+ moments of the year. And it was a good way to end this era of SmackDown because, of course, things changed with the WWE draft. And finally, after that, we know the roster changed. Sasha was drafted to SmackDown once again, which I was very happy about because I was like you guys. We were all terrified that Sasha was going to get moved to Raw, because she had been on SmackDown the last 2 years. And people were debating that a change of scenery would be perfect for Sasha. I thought Sasha was going to end up on Raw, but luckily she stayed on the A show. She stayed on SmackDown. And, Sasha didn't do too much, right? The end of the year, or nothing too major, but it wasn't like she wasn't being the best in the world. The last couple months since the draft, she hasn't had any title matches because we know that they're saving Charlotte and Sasha most likely for WrestleMania, which we'll talk about in just a sec. But still, she's had a strong end. She has Survivor Series, and of course, everyone brings up how Sasha doesn't have the best pay-per-view record. I stopped looking at that stuff a long time ago because it's just really just a waste of time to me. Like really, you guys hear me say this all the time. WWE is the ones who book. They make the decision of who wins, who loses. If that's all you focus on, then you're kind of blind, in my opinion. Because a real wrestling fan looks at the matches, the character, the circumstances, all of that. You take Sasha's, pay-per-view record aside, she's the best in the world. She always delivers every single time, no matter if it's a TV match, a live event, or a pay-per-view. She always fucking delivers. And that's what matters. That's what matters. So uh me just looking at what Sasha did here at the end of the year, she had Survivor Series, and then she's been on a huge winning streak because clearly they're keeping her strong going into 2022. She's had some great matches with Shayna Baszler, Natalya, right? She's had some good tag team matches with Toni Storm. So, she's been on a winning streak. She's had some good tag team matches with Naomi. So she's not doing anything big from a storyline perspective, of course, because they're saving her and Charlotte, which we should see ramp up here as we enter 2022 finally. But still, it doesn't mean she's not doing great work. And true wrestling fans who know that kind of stuff and notice greatness like that, they know how great Sasha Banks is. They know that. So, like, I don't have to sit here and tell you, oh, yeah, just because Sasha wasn't holding a title for most of this year or whatever, doesn't mean she wasn't doing great work. She doesn't have direction. We know that the superstars in WWE don't have as much creative direction as the superstars in AEW, right? It's one of the things that makes AEW, so much more enjoyable than WWE these days. But we know that that's on WWE. That's WWE's fault for that's their horrific booking. But still, for Sasha to still be that great, even with not the best booking, this is a testament to her greatness, right? So you look at Sasha's 2022. Look, or 2021. The moments that stand out, of course, are WrestleMania, right, and Crown Jewel. I think those are the two big moments that stand out. Sasha did some great work is when she was on TV, even though her booking wasn't the greatest. They could have done a better job with booking the feud with Bianca Belair, of course. But for the most part, Sasha had a solid 2022. And if we're talking about the women's division as a whole, Sasha probably was the MVP of the women's division if we're looking at it. Bianca, yes, Bianca has some great moments. Most of those moments, though, that Bianca had were alongside and were because of Sasha Banks. Yes, Bianca had the Royal Rumble victory, and she had some great matches with Bayley during the summer months. But for the most part, Bianca Belair, her biggest moments and the moments that made her into a star this year were because of Sasha Banks. WrestleMania and Crown Jewel, are a testament to that. Bianca, you look at what happened at SummerSlam, you look at what happened with Becky Lynch and Becky not elevating Bianca the way she should have been elevated, right? That hurts Bianca Belair at the end of the day. And, I know Bianca, has looked good in this feud with Doudrop, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with Bianca as we enter WrestleMania season, right? People are talking about Bianca versus Becky at WrestleMania, or maybe or maybe Liv Morgan versus Bianca. I don't know right now, right? There's just so many unknowns because you don't know what's going to happen when Bayley comes back and when Asuka comes back. You never know if Ronda Rousey could come back, right? We don't know what's going to happen. So we just got to be patient and see. But, Bianca, especially those poor moments that she had with Becky earlier this fall, they kind of hurt the way Bianca's year looked. Bianca looked great, and she elevated herself into one of the top women in the company, and I'll give Bianca her credit, because the way WWE booked Bianca when she first came to the main roster, it was horrific, and a lot of us thought, Bianca may not survive this poor booking, but she's done a good job, and Sasha should get credit for this. Bayley should get some credit for this, right? Bianca's done a good job of surviving, and I gotta give Bianca her props, and when I look at it, you look at the women's division, right? You can make cases, I guess, for somebody like Liv Morgan or Bayley until she got injured, but I feel like it's pretty obvious that when you look at the women's division, the two people that stand out as the MVPs are Bianca and Sasha Banks. I don't give a shit. Don't try to bring that Becky and Charlotte thing. I'm kind of lucky I'm not doing this podcast live because I know there would be some idiot, some delusional clown that would try to tell me that Becky and Charlotte are the MVPs. what the hell have Becky and Charlotte done? They have not elevated anybody all year. And the thing about it is, they've been holding the titles. They've been holding the titles. And tell me, what have Becky and Charlotte done with those titles? They've done absolutely nothing. Nothing. In the 4 months Sasha Banks held that title, right? Sasha held the title for 8 months, but in the 4 months, if we're talking about just this year alone, right? From the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, Sasha did more with that title than Becky and Charlotte have done combined. Oh, Becky and Charlotte have done nothing. They've been awful as champions. Becky has failed to elevate Bianca Belair, right? And she's failing to elevate Liv Morgan right now. Charlotte has buried Nikki ASH, buried Rhea Ripley, right? She didn't do anything for Asuka. And she just buried Toni Storm. But Charlotte has done nothing to elevate anybody all year. Sasha Banks in only, 7-8 months of work has elevated how many people? Elevated Carmella, elevated Nia Jax, elevated Shayna Baszler, elevated Toni Storm, elevated Bianca Belair. And it's not debatable. So I don't want to hear any of that nonsense that, that's Charlotte and Becky. They did their part to elevate. No, they're not. No. Just because they're the ones that WWE wants to have the titles on all the time doesn't mean that they elevate anybody. They don't. They bury the rest of the women's division. They hold the rest of them down. Becky has become exactly what she never wanted to be. What Becky complained about all those years ago, she's become that. And she's blind to that fact. Who has Becky elevated this year? Nobody. Same thing with Charlotte. It comes down to that. You can hold a title forever, but if you don't elevate anybody with that title, when we look back at your reign, it's going to be pathetic in our eyes. Why do you think I never talk about Becky's title reigns in the last couple of years and talk about how great they were? Because they were never great. They've given Becky and Charlotte these long title reigns, and they do nothing with them. But when Sasha and Bayley hold the titles, they actually know how to elevate people because they care about the people around the division, not just themselves. It's that simple. Becky and Charlotte, when they hold titles, they only care about themselves. When Sasha and Bayley hold titles, they care about themselves and the rest of the women's division. Because making the rest of the women's division look good will make themselves look even greater at the end of the day. That's why if you go on social media, people talk about how great Sasha's 8-month title reign as SmackDown Women's Champion was. Because it was great. Even though it was in a Thunderdome. Even though they could have done, things to make it even better. But for the most part, Sasha had a great reign as SmackDown Women's Champion. And we're hoping that they get to repeat that next year. And that's a perfect transition into talking about 2022. Right? What to expect from Sasha Banks in 2022? Well, we're expecting great things from the boss. Right now, she is the favorite to win the Women's Royal Rumble. She was the favorite to win the Women's Royal Rumble 2 years ago, but she wasn't on that show. She was injured and not able to compete. Or she was one of the favorites. And then last year, there was no need for her to be in the Women's Royal Rumble, of course, because she was the SmackDown Women's Champion at the time. Now, we've known that they've kept Sasha away from Charlotte for the most part because they know this is a big money feud. And, doing it on B-level pay-per-views wouldn't do its justice. Sasha and Charlotte, they have not feuded with each other since 2016. And, now is the perfect time to have these two run it back. You've guys seen at live events, Sasha and Charlotte have been facing off almost every weekend, reestablishing that great chemistry they had in 2016. And we all know Sasha and Charlotte put on some of the best matches in the history of the women's division during 2016. The only thing I can complain about, really, is the booking. Flip-flopping the titles between Sasha and Charlotte, and then, having Charlotte continuing to beat Sasha at all those pay-per-views. And I don't need to sit here and talk about how much I hate those moments. But we know that, 2022, they are having Sasha and Charlotte running back at some point, And we also know that WWE wants to do Sasha versus Trish Stratus. Sasha and Trish have been teasing that for years now. Ever since their confrontation at the Royal Rumble back in 2018, really, it's now been, close to 4 years, I believe? Was it the Royal Rumble 2019 or I gotta remember. I believe it was 2018 because Charlotte won in 2020, Becky won in 2019, so it was 2018. It's been nearly 4 years now that we've been wanting a Sasha and Trish Stratus match, and they're always talking about it on social media. This is the year to make it happen. I think at WrestleMania or SummerSlam, they need to make that match happen, and it's really all gonna depend on when Sasha and Charlotte happens. We just know that Charlotte wrapped up a feud with Toni Storm on SmackDown, where, of course, well, no surprise here, Charlotte failed to elevate Toni Storm, right? And now Toni Storm will fall back into the depths of the women's roster, along with everybody else that's not being booked correctly in that division. But we go into it now. Will WWE do Sasha and Charlotte before WrestleMania, or will they save it for WrestleMania? Well, they should save it for WrestleMania in my eyes. Sasha's already talked about how she wants to win the Royal Rumble, right? So I don't know who Charlotte should feud with right now. When I look at the women's division on SmackDown, it's not the best. Hey, I'd say maybe do Naomi and Charlotte, where I think maybe that would be a good side feud to save until you're ready to do Sasha and Charlotte. So I would do Charlotte and Naomi right now. Right, because I don't think there's any other top babyface on the SmackDown Women's division outside of Sasha and Toni Storm. So I would do Naomi and Charlotte right now. I would have Sasha win the Women's Royal Rumble, right? And all that crap. Look, guys, I know there's a lot of crap on social media. I've seen it. Everyone, there's a bunch of idiots arguing with one another on social media. Sasha should win the Women's Royal Rumble. People saying Sasha shouldn't. Where were all you clowns when Becky and Charlotte won the Royal Rumbles the last couple years? I remember I was here complaining about Charlotte winning the Women's Royal Rumble. I remember that Royal Rumble was actually very, very enjoyable. That was very, very enjoyable. That was the Royal Rumble where Drew McIntyre won. That was a great pay-per-view. Drew McIntyre won the Royal Rumble that year. And Edge made his return after 10 years, right? And the Women's Royal Rumble was actually pretty good, outside of Charlotte winning it. But I felt like I was one of the only people on here bitching and moaning about Charlotte winning the Royal Rumble. I really do feel like that. But I feel like everybody else was just like, whatever, it's Charlotte. Why should you be surprised? But then when Sasha's the favorite to win the Women's Royal Rumble this year, when it's Sasha's time, right? Now everyone has a problem with it. Who else really in that women's division deserves it? Really? Bianca won it last year. If we're talking a couple years down the line and you want to have Bianca win it, that's a different conversation. We'll talk about that when we get there. But, right now, here we are in 2022. Bianca just won the Women's Royal Rumble last year. And she doesn't need to win it again this coming year. Right? You can make an argument for Bayley or Asuka if Bayley's healthy by then. We don't know. Or if Asuka's been off TV now for the better part of half a year, right? You can make arguments for those two, but Sasha's still the favorite in my eyes. The only person I can think about that maybe you can make an argument for is Liv Morgan. I want to see Liv Morgan become a women's champion. I think Liv Morgan should be the one to take the title from Becky Lynch. I just don't think WWE's going to do it. If they didn't do it a couple weeks ago on Raw, they're not going to do it now. I would love to see Liv Morgan, take the title from Becky Lynch at day one. But I just don't see it happening. I don't think it's going to happen at the Royal Rumble, and I don't think it's going to happen at WrestleMania. I think something else is going to happen. I would love to see Liv win that championship. Trust me. I just don't think it's going to happen. And even still, you can make an argument that the only person that should be in contention to take the Royal Rumble from Sasha is Liv Morgan, but I just don't think it's happening. I just don't think WWE looks at Liv Morgan as that type of person, even though Liv is highly underrated in the ring. But the thing about it is, you spent the majority of Liv Morgan's career not using her. Now, as we enter the WrestleMania season, we know how WWE is. WWE puts the focus on its stars. That's what WWE does every single year around this time. And that's exactly what they're going to do again this year. As much as I love Liv Morgan, WWE is going to put the focus on its stars. And I just think that Liv Morgan winning the Women's Royal Rumble, even though it makes sense, right? It's probably going to be Sasha, which it should be. Sasha should be the favorite. I'll go out on a limb and I'll say probably the final four, or the final six. I think the final six, if Asuka and Bayley come back, we don't know. If Asuka and Bayley come back for the Rumble, I think the final six will be Sasha, Doudrop, Bianca, Bayley, Asuka, and Liv Morgan. Maybe a seven, maybe Alexa Bliss. We know that Alexa Bliss has been taking time off the last couple of months, right? Alexa Bliss is going to probably be back here as we enter into WrestleMania season. I would not be surprised. You never know. Alexa Bliss might be the one that eventually beats Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship, right? Because we know that Alexa is very, very over with the crowd as a babyface, and I would not be surprised if Alexa is the one that they have next in line to challenge Becky. You never know, but I would say that those seven would be the seven people I would consider to win the Women's Royal Rumble, right? I could see those seven women being the final seven in the Women's Royal Rumble match, but the favorite in my eyes should be Sasha Banks, right? And then, there's really no discussion in that regard. I don't think there's any discussion, but we'll see what happens. But Sasha should be the favorite, in my opinion, to win the Women's Royal Rumble. I feel like you guys, you idiots on social media, man, you guys just have this hate for Sasha Banks. You just don't want to see her succeed. Really, that's the way I look at it. Because where were you a couple years ago when Charlotte was winning the Women's Royal Rumble? I didn't hear anything from you clowns then. But now that Sasha's the favorite that wins the Women's Royal Rumble, you guys want to complain saying, oh, Sasha doesn't need the Women's Royal Rumble to get a title match. Even though Charlotte didn't need a Women's Royal Rumble to get a title match, right? Because Charlotte's the most decorated women's superstar in WWE history. Why does Charlotte need a Women's Royal Rumble to get a WrestleMania match? Yeah, answer me that. Answer me that. Charlotte could walk up to anybody and be like, I'm the queen, do her same old stupid promo with her same old, her lame-ass robo-talk, right? She can walk up to anybody and be like, I'm the queen, give me a women's title match. It's that simple. It's that simple. So, I didn't hear you guys complaining when Charlotte won the Women's Royal Rumble. I don't want to hear anybody complain when Sasha wins the Women's Royal Rumble. Sasha deserves it. She's the best female wrestler in the world. She has been held down long enough. She deserves these big moments, right? For everything that Sasha has done in her career, there are so many big moments that she hasn't been given. So many big moments that she hasn't been given. 2022 is going to be Sasha's year. She's going to win the Women's Royal Rumble, right? Go on to most likely face Charlotte at WrestleMania. I know some people want to make the argument that they should do Sasha and Becky at WrestleMania. And even though I wouldn't be against that, we just seen Sasha and Becky, earlier this year. We saw them in the fall. They faced off on SmackDown. They had one of the best, one-on-one matches on TV this year. I didn't even talk about that earlier. Remember that great TV match that Sasha and Becky had, which was like 20 minutes long? It felt like a pay-per-view match. It was spectacular. Sasha and Becky reminding everybody how great their chemistry is. We just saw that. Plus, we already talked about Crown Jewel with Sasha, Becky, and Bianca. So, even though I wouldn't complain if we saw Sasha and Becky for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania, I think Sasha and Charlotte is the way to go. Way to go. On the Raw side of things, there's honestly a lot you can do with Becky. You can do Becky versus Liv. You can do Becky versus Bianca. You could do Becky versus Bayley, if Bayley's ready. Especially Bayley, because that's a feud people have been wanting for years, and we've never truly gotten a main event, a main roster feud with Becky and Bayley, because they've always really been on opposite brands. You can do Becky versus Ronda if Ronda is ready to come back. You can do Becky versus Asuka. There's lots of options on the Raw side of things when it comes to Becky Lynch and WrestleMania, right? On SmackDown, it's really just Sasha and Charlotte. There's really not, much else. Charlotte's already faced everybody. So Sasha and Charlotte running it back 5 years later, that's the way you should go. That's the way you should go. And then Sasha, of course, beating Charlotte in one of the main events, like because Sasha and Charlotte should main event either night 1 or night 2, depending on how they do it. Sasha versus Charlotte, do that at WrestleMania, and have Sasha finally break her WrestleMania curse and finally get her first WrestleMania win in the main event of WrestleMania against Charlotte. Have Sasha and Charlotte kill it in a 25, 30-minute classic, which we know they can do, and then have Sasha finally get her WrestleMania the moment she's been deserving of for years. In my opinion, Sasha should already have, 2 or 3 WrestleMania wins. But of course, WWE has not given them to her. It makes no sense that everybody else in the women's division has their WrestleMania moment and Sasha does not have hers yet. This is the year for Sasha Banks, right? And then you have her as the top babyface on SmackDown. Give us the Sasha and Naomi feud we've always wanted. Give us Sasha versus Toni Storm. Give us Sasha and Shayna Baszler. And, we'll probably have a draft or a shakeup or something like that, and then we'll see what happens. But give us those matches, all right? And then if you want, at SummerSlam, finally give us Sasha and Trish. That's what I would do, Give us Sasha and Trish. Give us the match we've been waiting for now for years. Give us Sasha and Trish at SummerSlam. So 2022 is looking pretty good, and pretty promising for the best female wrestler in the world. If everything goes right and WWE Creative doesn't fuck it up, Sasha should win the Women's Royal Rumble. She should main event one of the 2 nights of WrestleMania, against Charlotte, right? She should beat Charlotte and become SmackDown Women's Champion at WrestleMania and finally get that first WrestleMania victory off her back, right? And then she should absolutely kill it for the rest of the year, retaining and defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against some of the best wrestlers in the world, elevating people in that division, something that Becky and Charlotte failed to do on a weekly basis. And then eventually, at some point this year, some point in 2022, we should finally get that dream match between Sasha and Trish Stratus. So when I look at 2022 for Sasha Banks, it looks very promising, and then Sasha will continue to prove to everybody and show why she is the best female wrestler in the world, right? So that's my thoughts, and this is probably where I'm going to end the video. I'll let you guys put your thoughts in the comment section. So, let me know in the comment section, what did you guys think of Sasha Banks in 2021? What was your favorite moment? What was your favorite match? Are there any moments that I'm forgetting? I have a lot of stuff that goes through my head, so maybe I could be forgetting, some big Sasha moments from 2021. But if there are any of those, let me know in the comment section down below. But other than that, guys, that's about all I got for you guys today. Thank you guys for all the love and support. Thank you guys. Leave a like on the video if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel by clicking the bell next to my name, Fitzmonk TV, so you guys are notified every time I post a new video. Follow me down on social media. The link is in the description down below. Thank you guys for everything, man. Check out all my other wrestling content. Like I said, guys, if you guys haven't checked out the Monday Night Raw review, it is live on the channel. And depending on when you guys are watching this, I have tons of wrestling content coming. We got AEW, we got SmackDown, we got our end of the year stream. Plus, we have WWE Day 1 this weekend, our first pay-per-view of the year on the first day of the year. It's going to be a big one. And I hope you guys are excited for that. Like I said, Day 1, right after the show goes off the air, we'll be right here on the channel going over the show like we always do. But other than that, guys, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe and healthy, y'all. Peace.